Sundaypuncher podcast. It's early on Sunday morning, and like early enough to say this is like the hard work dedication hour, but this is what it requires thanks to Jason's busy day. And we're going to talk about Gonzalez versus Sosa, Golovkin versus Monroe, those two fights from last night. We're going to talk about the upcoming James DeGale card, where he's going to face Andre Dirrell, and the undercard there, and a pretty big heavyweight fight next week that we have coming up. We're going to get to Alexander Povetkin versus Mike Perez. We're going to discuss pound for pound, not our list, but we're going to talk about whether we think certain fighters deserve to be on the list, and we'll finish it off with some quick questions, and that'll be that for this week's episode. So thanks for listening, and we're going to talk about a few more things at the end really quickly, and then that'll be it. So now for this week, if you didn't already know by now, well, I guess now you do, that there are certainly guys worth watching below 122 pounds. And I don't think you can say without, being a total liar that you did not want to see more of Roman Gonzalez last night. What did you think, Simon?
Yeah, it was a brilliant showing again, as always. People sort of questioned whether, like, people who hadn't watched Roman were looking at his most recent fight where he was fighting that guy who'd come off a bunch of losses, where he was in, and that fight he was putting on for free in his hometown. Like, he didn't even charge people to attend it. It was like a community service, and they were looking at that fight and thinking, this is some guy with a padded record. I've never heard of him. I've never seen him. Everyone's really impressed, but they're all idiots. He's been fighting nobodies, and they couldn't be more wrong. This is someone who's got a fantastic resume and came up against someone who also had a fantastic resume and made them look totally pedestrian. He is just clinical the way that he works, and he's not even just a high pressure come forward fighter. He has fantastic footwork and lateral movement. He's the full package. He's something really special to watch.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a fighter who can fight more fluid and switch from offense to defense. I mean, not since Sergio Martinez, I think, was a fighter able to do that so well. And Sergio had a much different style. He wasn't fully pressure the way Gonzalez is. But last night was ridiculous what he did. I mean, if there's one way to make a statement, that's the way to do it.
I saw a showcase fight. I mean, you guys gave him a lot of high praise, and it's obviously deservedly so, but I saw a showcase fight where he did what he should have done, and he made a great impression on American audiences for his first fight in the U.S. I would have expected nothing less from him. Anything less probably would have been a letdown. So he got in the ring. He did exactly what he needed to do. He's going to make you tune in again, and I think it would be crazy of HBO to not continue to broadcast him and to not continue to broadcast him on the undercard of Golovkin fights. The two are made for each other. They just better hope they have a lot of narrative discussion in between, because these fights aren't lasting long.
No, and I think though the overwhelming point is that usually when they do a showcase fight, they bring in someone that's sort of ranked 20th, 30th or whatever, a lower caliber fighter that can get blown away to give your star the platform to make an impression, right? But here they're using like a veteran who's been in there, huge amount of championship experience.
With an argument for being in the top 10.
Yeah, exactly. And to make someone like that, you're so certain of this guy's talents that you're putting him in with someone like that just as a showcase blowout. Like, come on, that's huge.
I mean, there are a few fighters in the sport that you can put them in with, say, I don't know, the 8th, 9th, or 10th ranked guy in the division, and they can do what Gonzalez did to them.
Yeah, and they were both on the same card last night.
Yeah. Which is ridiculous. I mean, if you didn't think about this beforehand, like now looking back, we got two of the top, not only pound for pound fighters, but action fighters on the same card last night. It was really ridiculous. And we didn't even have that on May 2nd.
Yeah, exactly. When was the last time we've had two people that are top 10 pound for pounders on the same card? It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to go back to...
Some would argue that Lomachenko and Mayweather.
Oh, all right. Well, what I wanted to actually do is, a lot of people I was looking at the comments, and a lot of people don't really they fully understand, but they don't really know what's going on in the flyweight division, and they're not too sure what Gonzalez's option. So first, a little rundown of the flyweight division. Right now, Gonzalez obviously sits on the throne. Gonzalez is the top flyweight in the world. But number two is a guy named Juan Francisco Estrada, who actually fought on HBO2 on one of Zhu Shiming's first cards in Macau. He's fought Gonzalez before and took him 12 rounds. So you know that this dude is legit. He's younger than Gonzalez, and he holds two titles at flyweight. So the fight to make at flyweight, above all, is Estrada. Below him is I'm Not Ruinrong, who is the guy who he beat up Zhu Shiming in Macau and then took a decision. That's also a good fight to make, but you can see that there's a clear difference in class between Gonzalez and Ruinrong.
Yeah.
Then there's Kazuto Ioka, who holds a paper title. He just recently scraped by Juan Carlos Revico, who's an Argentine. Close fight. I think either they do it again or they both avoid Gonzalez like the plague. There's Brian Viloria, who I think Gonzalez would smash. However, he does have some drawing ability, at least in California. And that's a big fight that you could make here, and also another sort of showcase fight for Gonzalez. And after that, I mean, there's really nobody worth mentioning. Not worth mentioning, but they don't belong in the same ring as Gonzalez if they value their health.
Yeah, you almost could have stopped that list at Valoria. Like he hasn't looked too good recently.
Oh, actually, Simon. Yeah, you're right, Jason. But he has won his last three fights, and you can sell that. Just
I'm not. Yeah, it's a totally bankable fight. But if you're worried about people's health, I would have cut the list off.
Yeah.
There is Kevin Satchel. If you're Frank Warren, maybe send 14-0 with 3 knockout Kevin Satchel to America to fight Roman Gonzalez. If you're Frank Warren.
Yeah, it would be very reckless matchmaking, wouldn't it? I don't see
Frank
anyone.
Warren, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, who could believe he'd never get it wrong? No, I think that there's a shame, but there's not enough talent in that division to really trouble him. Ruinrong is skilled enough defensively to keep away someone like Zhu Shiming that's got that limited offense, but someone as complete as Roman Gonzalez is going to tear through that.
And Ruinrong is good. Make no mistake,
yeah,
he's good.
Of course. Yeah, a great fighter. It's one of those ones where you get a runaway champ, and you see it in a few divisions where there's just someone who is just that much better. Estrada would be like the fight you'd want to see the most competitive, but the sad thing is we've already seen the answer there, and we'd likely get the same, if not worse, in terms of performance.
I think we're likely to get the same, but I think Estrada has improved a lot since their first fight.
Yeah, without doubt.
Wins,
I think that improvements actually lead to him getting stopped rather than losing on points. No, and it's true, because I think he's going to take a risk at some point that opens him up and he'll get punished for it.
The other option is, and this is if Donny Nietes, who's one of the runaway champions, I don't know if he's run away yet, but he's on his way out the door in the light flyweight division if he wants to move up. Now, this guy's an action fighter. He's very good at what he does. He knocks people out. That's a great fight to make, and he's got a really good resume. You'd have to follow the light flyweight division to recognize some of the names on his division, but this dude is, like Gonzalez, was a minimum weight champion before moving up and capturing a belt at light flyweight.
Yeah, size-wise, it'd be fairly fair.
That's what I was just going to ask. Where is Gonzalez size-wise for flyweight? Is he on the bigger side of things? Do you guys see him continuing to move up through weight divisions, or what do you think?
Probably not.
He's actually kind of small.
Yeah. I think he could cut it at Superfly just on natural talent alone, but he'd have a huge size disadvantage.
Yeah, he's not a very big guy, but the division, I guess he's average. It averages from like 5'2" to 5'5" in the division. So he's right around the middle. Do I see him? I think so. Rigondeaux's 5'4", and he's dominating super bantamweight. And some people throw that fight out there as a possibility, maybe. Based on what we've seen from Rigondeaux, though, I do think Gonzalez can move all the way to 122. We saw him rehydrated to 122-24 last night. I mean, did he look slow or anything?
Yeah, no, not at all.
No. There's one fight though that Max Kellerman alluded to, and that is for Gonzalez to fight the monster. It's not like he's a monster because of his skill, although he is kind of a monster skill wise, but that's his nickname. Naoya Inoue or E. I don't know how to say this guy's name. Naoya Inoue. So anyway, Inoue, he's a terrifying little fighter.
I think it's
And
pronounced Monaco.
no, it's
No.
not actually. I don't know why you say it that way. Inoue is a. I mean, I've known who this guy was. After watching the second pro fight, I knew he's dangerous. And the only problem with that fight, which would be a super fight, is that logistically, I don't know that they can make it work with Japan and America because everybody's going to want to watch this fight, and we kind of are opposite time zones. And if you haven't seen Inoue before, go look at the Omar Narvaez fight. What he did to Narvaez was even more impressive than what Gonzalez did, and the difference was Narvaez was the number one guy in that division who held the belt for like 10 years, and Edgar Sosa was already faded. Go look that up. What do you guys think about that fight?
Which one? Sorry, the potential Inoue fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's be an absolute classic, just instant classic. But as you mentioned, because Naoya has this like huge and insular following within Japan, it makes it sort of the mandatory place to stage it. And where Roman's only just starting to build a fan base, they can't really try and dictate, that he's this huge draw in the US. He's a fledgling prospect in terms of fandom. Obviously he's accomplished, and he's not in any way a prospect in terms of his talent and his accomplishment, but he hasn't built that fan base yet. And because
Yeah.
that fan base isn't there, you can't demand it. And do you really want to go? I think he probably would go to Japan and do that fight, but it wouldn't sell nearly as well as it would if they'd leave it and let it marinate for a year or so and let Roman build up a following within the US and do it in the US.
Well, the tough part there, so for one, right now, we don't even know if Gonzalez can headline a card on HBO and do an average number. Like, we just don't know that. He had, the hottest fighter in the sport as his main event. So,
Yeah.
and that crowd was crazy. So we can't really judge Gonzalez yet based on what his drawing ability. If they wanted to rush it, though, Gonzalez actually has a decent following in Japan. He is a Taken Fighter, which is a gym and promotional company in Japan that also doesn't have Inoue, but it has other Japanese champions. So that's a really viable option. But does Gonzalez want to, spurn the U.S. audience who now wants to see him?
Yeah, and HBO have taken this, they fought fiercely to get him on this undercard, and is he going to then bail and do a giant super fight not with them, or at a time that's really inconvenient for them?
Yeah, last thing about this fight, if you're Showtime or any other network and you're kicking yourself for not putting Gonzalez on your cards earlier, this is your own fault and you have nobody to blame. He has been out there for a long time, beating up everybody, and nobody has came knocking, saying, "Hey, Gonzalez, can we show your fights?" Not a single person, or not a single network. And you know,
His last fight, you had to watch through terrible quality potato streams on the internet of like Canal 4 TV or whatever.
it was a stream of a stream of a stream.
It was
so
like,
awful.
I think it was like someone's webcam pointed at a Facebook feed that was, it was just, honestly, this was
on
and this-
Periscope.
watching this at like 3 a.m., like the little pixels, like, oh yeah, I think I can see Gonzalez. And, nobody's touching it. They could have, like, the bidding price for that fight, television rights, would have been nothing. Any network could have just scooped that up.
I'm
No
telling
one
you
did.
guys right now, if I would have known,
10th of Lemieux.
Yeah.
if I would have known how much they were going to broadcast that fight, and I would have bought it, and I would have aired it somehow. I would have figured out how to put it on my site, but I would have aired that fight if I would have known that was how they were going to stream it. All right, so guys, let's talk about Golovkin. I think what we saw last night was that Golovkin can flip a switch whenever he wants to. He can do what he wants whenever he chooses to do it. I don't think Simon agrees with me. Oh, you got a point, Jason?
Yeah, let me make a quick point about Golovkin.
Yeah, go for it.
There's not many fighters that I would stand behind and say, they're going to let themselves get hit. It's pretty evident of what Golovkin's strategy last night was. And, they alluded to it in the post-fight interview as far as, I tried to give him a chance. I dominated him initially, and then I tried to give him a chance. So here's the thing. If that's your strategy, you don't want to tell people because, they're like, I tried to give him a chance so I could get big names in the ring like Miguel Cotto and Canelo Alvarez, so I let this guy tee off on me. And it's like, well, don't tell them because now they know.
This is classic Golovkin.
That's the trap.
I totally think that is what happened, and they did, and that was the plan going into the fight. Try to look.
Golovkin's like a kid. Tell the kid like, "Hey, we're gonna let you do this, but don't tell your mom." The first thing
and then
you
he
do
goes and tells his mom immediately. I'm like, dude, now they know. Like, what are you doing? But again, like I preface this. I would basically get behind 0 fighters and say this. Golovkin is the exception. He let Monroe hit him. Look at where he was holding his hands. He doesn't hold his hands down there in any other fight. He was helping Monroe. He was like, here you go. And
they paid Monroe $100,000. He had to get his money's worth.
Oh, man.
He had to land a few punches.
Oh. He did.
Poor guy.
He landed a couple. He did good.
No, Monroe deserves a ton of praise. We should not even be talking about Golovkin because he did what we thought he would do. Monroe deserves the praise here.
Monroe did what I didn't think he would do, and that was keep fighting after the second round. I'm like, I text you. I'm like, you're not getting paid by the round here.
That was funny.
Go down, man. You're really, really hurt, and you're just a tough guy. He was one of those guys where his toughness got in the way. And I really, I hope he could go on to still have a really long career because he was on a good track up until now. And he was really exciting and he was a fun fighter to watch and he was somebody that you could root for and get behind. So I really hope this doesn't set him back too much. And I hope he didn't take too much unnecessary punishment because to me it seemed like he was just being a little too tough for his own good.
Yeah, Barry Jones called it right. He said that what Monroe's doing, he's got the right idea. His game plan's pretty good. He's doing the right things. He just doesn't have the natural ability and talents in order to make it work. He hasn't got the power that can stop Golovkin in his tracks or give him something to think about. But in terms of the game plan and the approach, that was in the right wheelhouse.
Yeah, definitely. It was along the right lines. However, I don't know. Do they need, I think they need to start actually paying these guys by the round. Like, hey, we're going to pay you $100,000 every round you stay on your feet.
I see a few issues with that. But
well, actually, this is supposed to lead into, I wanted you to at some point tell everybody about Frank Warren's son's brilliant new idea for boxing.
No, don't do that. We can't give that like, it's hideous. We can't give that any time or attention.
That's our hidden gem. I don't want anybody else to know about it. That's all mine. I'm a boxing hipster. I don't want anybody to know about it. We can't broadcast that beautiful concept to the masses.
I think we have a moral obligation to suppress this and make sure it never sees the light of day. Because if people start enjoying it, then that's a problem for boxing.
All right, well, back to Monroe. One of the things that I saw was that Monroe showed up, clearly was not looking to lose the fight. He wasn't scared. Even the initial look of, all these other fighters that we see Golovkin fight, Matthew Macklin exception, they got the tough look, but you can see that there's like a little bit of concern in their face. Matthew Macklin had the full-on concern look on his face.
Had it getting up from his second round knockdown.
Yeah. But Monroe, at least it looked like his strategy was, which had some success, was I'm going to get lucky here. Eventually, if I hit him as he comes in, he's going to get me most of the time, but I'm going to drill him every so often, and maybe I knock him out.
Yeah, he fought with abandon. He was not afraid to take Golovkin shots, and that was refreshing to see a fighter just go in there and not fight scared.
He made little tweaks and changes. Like he was way more agile and mobile in the first round, but he kept getting stalked and caught as the ring was cut off. So he thought, you know what? I'm going to stand in the pocket and smother him so that he can't build up momentum. I'm going to switch directions so that he has to keep resetting so Golovkin never gets into his rhythm. And it was clever. It was smart play. It wasn't enough on the day, but it was a clever approach. It's something weird to be said though, like for you had Gil who shook his head. And you've now got Monroe, who says he doesn't want to continue. How is he getting so many of these proud fighters to say, you know what, I don't want to continue?
It's the pressure isn't just physical, but I think there's the mental pressure of getting the ring cut off, no matter what you do, getting hit.
Absolutely.
At least not hard to knock you out, but hard enough to make you just hate yourself.
Just smoke your boots, yeah. I think it looked to me like Monroe was trying to get counted out by accident on purpose. Stood up late. I think he was hoping for the hands to be waved, and so that he could say, "What? Are you kidding me? I was up by." And really, he's like just grateful he's been, bowed out.
He's picked the wrong guy because Jack Reese is always looking to make a story.
Yeah, he's always willing to give you an extra 3 seconds to get up.
I mean, Smoger would have picked him up and pushed him back in.
Pushed him back.
Threw him back in.
Kissed him on the cheek and threw him back in.
For me, Monroe, though, his stock rose a lot. I thought he looked way better. Now, granted, you might be right, Jason, and Golovkin might have given him, some, but...
Golovkin completely stepped off the gas.
But Monroe did look great, and I thought that there were middleweights out there who might hold titles that I think Monroe could beat.
Well, my concern with Monroe is, did he take too much punishment? Legitimately.
Did Miguel Cotto take too much punishment? Oh, you want to know which fight that was in? I'll tell you which fight. Maybe in the Margarito fight, maybe in the Pacquiao fight.
Right. So Miguel Cotto's an elite-level talent.
Oh, really?
We don't know that about Monroe to date.
You think Miguel Cotto today is an elite-level talent?
I didn't say that. I said he's proven to be.
No, I'm asking you.
Right now?
Uh-huh.
In what division?
Middleweight. He's the middleweight champion.
No, but that's not the conversation we're having.
No, I know, but I wanted to ask you that question.
Okay. Send the hate mail. No, he's good. I don't know. We haven't seen him fight at middleweight enough to really be able to assess.
Trap.
Yeah. Did it work?
A little bit.
Yeah, a real little bit.
4 out of 10.
That's pushing it.
Monroe's game plan.
We haven't seen Miguel fight at middleweight enough to be able to accurately assess him. So that's a moot point. But the bottom line is we don't know that Willie Monroe Jr. is going to be able to, have enough left in the tank. He's young. But I don't know. I just saw a fighter who took a lot of punishment, and not everybody bounces back the same way that Miguel Cotto does.
I saw this as a step down from who he'd been fighting previously, but I totally rescind that. It wasn't a step down. This guy would probably cut it with the Gils and the Murrays of the division. And I don't know if he'd necessarily win, but he wouldn't look out of place amongst them.
Yeah, that's what I was really going for. I thought Monroe, at least to me, I wasn't expecting much, actually. I thought, okay, this is a Friday Night Fights fighter. He is going to get obliterated by Golovkin. Even if he lasts 8 rounds, it's not going to be pretty. Last thing about this fight. In the post-fight interview, Max was trying to put a tremendous amount of pressure on Golden Boy and Canelo and anybody who's involved to make that fight now. Do you think it was enough?
Firstly, I'm amazed that he's still got his job. I thought all the people that said he was rude to Pacquiao, he was going to be out of a job soon. No?
They joked about it too on the podcast.
Oh, did they really?
Lampley joked about Golovkin hitting him.
His post-fight interviews are about as entertaining as his fights, and that's saying
Max's
something.
Or
No, Golovkin's. Yeah, and Max too. Max does great work in order to make them happen in that way. But I think that Golovkin's still in the same trap that he's been in for a while, where he's going to perpetually be. I think you're going to have Andy Lee and Quillin are going to go off and do a rematch most likely, and keep it amongst themselves. Cotto's obviously got Gil, and we don't even know how that's going to size up. Alvarez would be silly to come up soon. He can do stuff still at the weight below. So I think that he's in this problem where he's willing, and everyone's kind of, I don't know, waiting for someone else to go first.
Jason, do you think that it seems like there's a lot of people right now? I know I said this is the last question. I guess I lied. That Canelo would be the one to outbox Golovkin. Do you think people are just caught up in the hype of Alvarez's win over Kirkland? That was just
without
utterly
a doubt.
sensational.
It was utterly sensational, but it was another showcase fight.
That's your motto, Jason. You're always saying that.
Well, it is, man. If you if you look back and just do a quick glance, I guess it's easier to say in hindsight, but I mean, come on.
No,
I think we said that going in.
Yeah, everybody predicted a knockout on this in this forum of our podcast, so let's not pretend it wasn't.
But it's like when people get Audley Harrison in heavyweight and they go, Audley Harrison, gold medalist, this is going to be a huge test, and then it's not, and it's obvious it's a showcase. It's the same trick we see in most divisions,
over and over. Yeah, exactly. So we don't need to be fooled by it. Could Canelo compete with Golovkin? No, the question is, could he beat him? I'm not even necessarily sure he could compete with him. He definitely can't beat him. He will get stopped, and it will probably. I would venture to say like Monroe could have had more success than Canelo will.
Do you think
Canelo has no attributes that are going to trouble Golovkin at all. We haven't seen anything from Canelo that
apparently his accuracy.
Canelo's a great fighter, don't get me wrong. He's a fantastic talent in the sport. But
that's not what I'm saying.
He doesn't have the goods. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have enough of it.
Are you kidding? Golovkin would steamroll through him, and he probably would do it in 3 or 4 rounds.
I don't know about the timing, but I'm definitely agreeing with the sentiment. I don't think it'll be.
It's not a fair fight.
Pretty. Yeah, exactly. I don't think
it's just not fair. They could tie a hand behind Golovkin's back or something, to make it work.
I like Canelo, so I'm going to stay out of this conversation.
No, you could like Canelo. You just have to have a realistic.
It's not a matter of like or dislike. Exactly.
You just have to have a realistic expectation of how bad that poor boy is going to get hurt.
Oh, I have a realistic expectation, and I'm not going to say anything.
He gets paid really well, so he could cover all his medical costs and everything. So
you should throw Monroe a few bucks.
So you think it's a competitive fight?
I'll just say that Golovkin wins. That's it. Let's talk about James DeGale versus Andre Dirrell, another guy with medical bills. You guys don't know? Andre Dirrell took a pretty long break from boxing because he was in the Super 6 tournament. He faced Arthur Abraham, our old friend, and Dirrell hit him while he was down in the back of the head. What happened was Dirrell slips to the canvas, and Abraham saw his opportunity to hit him in the back of the head and got DQ'd. And that had Dirrell suffer some neurological problems.
That's the thing about Golovkin, though. You constantly watch him pull his punches. Anytime the bell sounds, anytime an opponent goes down, he's always acutely on top of pulling his punches. Sorry.
How the hell are we back on Golovkin?
It's magnetic. He's charming.
Yeah.
All roads lead to Golovkin right now.
Don't say something good about this fight.
You're talking about the wrong Andre. The Andre that you should be talking about is Ward.
In time, he will be back, and Ward will beat Golovkin.
I'm favoring Golovkin, even at 168 at this point.
They can fight at 160, and Ward will beat him.
They can fight at 175, and Golovkin will beat him.
What's Ward look like?
Stevenson's beating both of them.
People obviously they have a sell-by date. What's Ward looked like in the last 12 to 18 months when he's fought? What's he appeared like?
Well, he didn't actually go so well because he got knocked out in sparring by Amir Khan. So I don't know.
This is my point. You haven't seen him in so long that you don't know how he's
Let me ask you this.
Paul Spadafora dropped him in sparring.
Spadafora dropped and outboxed him too.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this, though. When Andre Ward took a year off and came back to fight against Edwin Rodriguez, how much ring rust did you see on him? Oh, absolutely none.
Right, he dominated.
He won
but
every single round and managed to get Rodriguez
10%
to
of his
punch
purse
Jack
deducted.
Reese.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and he took 10% of his purse.
look, you couldn't continually do that. If you kept taking a year off and come back, sooner or later you're going to look 80 years old. You know, I'm not saying that he hasn't.
Done it.
I'm not saying he hasn't done it before. I'm saying that every time there's a big period of inactivity, there's a risk that you have no idea how they're going to look coming back.
How come Carl Froch doesn't want to fight Ward?
I think because it's sort of foregone conclusion. Froch,
Yeah.
I think Froch lives very much in the spirit of public sentiment. So when asked about Golovkin, he's like, "Nah, that kid, hits like a mule." When asked about Ward, he's like, "What's the point? I'd lose again." So it's like whatever the public consensus is, that's what he reckons.
He's
Does
cool.
Froch not have an opinion of anything?
I don't think so. No, I think that he's very good at feeling out what the public reckons, and then he reckons that too.
Good for him.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshingly realistic.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm a Froch fan.
Well, except for the fact that he doesn't think that Groves would have came back in their first fight or second fight or was winning the fight at all, like some people believe.
Ugh.
No, Jason, there are people out there, and I can tell you who actually believe that.
Yeah, someone said that he won the second fight, Groves. He got stopped. And they're like, yeah, but before that, he won every round on the card. So in my eyes, that's a win. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah. Froch only won that because it was like hometown advantage in Wembley.
He's not even from London.
I know.
Groves is from London.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's crazy, those levels. So yeah, I'm just saying that if Ward comes back and looks every bit as awesome as he has in the past, then maybe.
Are you gonna take this back?
Nope, I'll still favor Golovkin.
You were crazy.
I don't know. I want to hold judgment until I see what he looks like after his big layoff.
Yeah, but
Simon, you only sound a little less crazy than Jason.
Yeah, but who is he fighting? What are we going to be able to tell from this fight? Nothing.
Just if the skill set's there.
I suppose, but I mean, he's a very skilled fighter. I don't think it's going to go away against this level of opposition. So I don't think this next fight for him is going to be a real barometer of where he's at.
It's like with Inoue, where you saw a second fight and you knew, oh, okay, this kid is special. He doesn't need to fight the pound for pound best flyweight or minimum weight in the world. Same with Gonzalez. We saw with Sosa last night. We don't need to see him fight Estrada to know that he's good. And it's going to be the same thing. When we see Ward destroy Paul Smith, we're going to say, okay, we don't really need to see him beat up Carl Froch again or Mikhail Kessler to know that he's back. Because he's
We
back.
need to see him. Yeah, what we need to see him is get knocked out by Golovkin.
Or Kovalev.
Neither would do that to him. Kovalev couldn't even knock down old man Hopkins.
Yeah,
Get out of here.
I don't think Kovalev will. But Gennady Golovkin, we've spoken at length on this show about how there's the sort of romanticized version of power. It's enchanting, and
you think you guys are falling under it?
Well, maybe we're all susceptible to it to some level. But the guy makes professional fighters quit and say they don't want to carry on doing a fight, and that's not often you see that. I think in the last 4 or 5 years, I've only seen that maybe 5 or 6 times, and 2 of them have been Golovkin.
And it's more than just power with Golovkin, right? It's his ability to completely dominate every aspect of the fight, right? That forces these opponents to quit. And, so it's more than just his power that's intoxicating, right? His power is the icing on the cake. What is amazing about Golovkin is his fundamentals, his ability to cut off the ring, his ability to keep the pressure on, his ability to somehow not get fatigued too much. You know what I mean? Those are the core things, right? So you're not getting enchanted by those. You're seeing them happen over and over again, and they're being solidified every time he fights. The power is just the icing on the cake, and then you get a little enchanted by it. But it's not just raw power that you're seeing with him, so that doesn't necessarily apply to Golovkin.
Against the 37th rated middleweight in the world who okay, fine.
Murray was rated 37?
Murray was rated
exactly.
in the top 5.
That's my point. Right. That's my point.
Yeah, he didn't make Murray quit though.
Gil.
Well, first of all, Gil didn't have a lot to work with. Second of all, the first round was like 18 minutes.
Got tripped over by
Poor guy, the cameraman tripped him. Everybody was helping Golovkin out there. The referee actually tried to make him fight too. So
Still, I think that you're on thin ground.
me,
Yeah,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
because you're
many
trying to make it
legitimate
sound like
wins
You're
does Golovkin
yeah.
have against top 3 opposition in his division?
how
And then
tell
I'll tell
me
you how
the
many
one that
Andre
he
Ward
hasn't beaten.
has.
Who's the top middleweight that he hasn't beaten? Cotto?
Correct.
Yeah.
Sergio
Okay,
Martinez.
Cotto's not even a middleweight, so you can't even use that argument because you don't believe he's a middleweight. So take him off. You can't use him. Sorry. Next.
Yeah,
Wait, he
Quillen and
is a
Who's the next
Anthony.
one?
middleweight. He is a middleweight, and I want to see him fight Golovkin. If he wasn't a middleweight, I would say I don't want to see him fight Golovkin. Just like I don't want to see Canelo fight Golovkin because he's a junior middleweight. Let him be a junior middleweight. I don't
Canelo
need to see
fought
him.
2 of his last 3 fights at middleweight.
Yeah, I
No, he
think you're
didn't.
in
He fought
strange
them at
territory here.
Yeah, you're
155.
going crazy, man.
Because you're talking about wanting to see and Gonzalez. They're
I
not in
never
the same
said
weight
that.
class. Yes,
I
you
never
did.
said I wanted to see it.
You said
I
it'd be
said
a
that's a
great
fight
fight.
to demand and a
Hmm.
great fight.
I think you're picking your words carefully, but
I
crossing
have
over
been
your
picking them
evens.
carefully from the start because
Just
I knew
say that
you guys.
Golovkin knocks Ward out and we can move on.
There is no way that happens.
I know.
I mean, Golovkin would have to get lucky. You know, that if he were to knock Ward out, it's not going to be because Golovkin did Golovkin.
Listen, do you not listen to his post-fight interviews? This is my lucky punch.
All right, let's move on because we've taken up all of our time for DeGale
I've been
versus
going
Dirrell.
like a half hour. Yeah.
Let's
It's somewhat straightforward, DeGale, in that fight. What are the betting lines? That's what
straightforward.
interests me.
It's even. It's even money
It,
pretty much everywhere.
is it really?
I think Dirrell is just slightly favored.
That's good because I favour DeGale going in.
Let me double check that so to make sure I'm not lying, because people like to call you a liar.
Yeah, have a peek because I love recommending a little underdog bet, and if DeGale goes to a good amount underdog odds, then
Yeah,
that'll be the one.
It's even for DeGale and Dirrell is slightly under.
Yeah, I would lean towards DeGale in this fight, too. He's got a
Because
little
he's
more.
the guy who scored knockouts recently.
I'm
I'm
so
seeing a
enchanted by his
trend here.
power. Yeah.
Seeing a trend
No,
here. Your picks
I just think he's better ultimately.
than Dirrell. Dirrell is a more complete fighter, I think,
Mm.
and he's shown a lot more dynamic to his offense and defense. However, DeGale has looked a little unstoppable lately, and I think that the reason why we don't see Froch fight him is not only because DeGale's not a big draw, but because there's some risk there. I think Froch definitely recognizes that.
I don't agree. I think Froch knows that he wants his Vegas fight. It's Vegas or nothing, and DeGale can't offer him a Vegas fight, and it's as simple as that. If you look at Froch's
I'm trying
resume,
to build up DeGale here, and
yeah,
shutting me down.
Simon's
Well-
just pulled the rug out from under you.
good because Froch made his career taking on unstoppable phenom after unstoppable phenom. You know, he's got one of those records that it's like, damn, did he really do this in such a short
Notice how
space
he
of
fought.
time?
Ward, but not Golovkin. Jason.
He will fight absolutely anyone, Froch, win or lose. When it's the right fight, and he wants this Vegas fight. And if enough people got behind demanding Golovkin at super middleweight against Froch in Vegas, I reckon he'd be game for it.
Hey, Froch, I'll go to that fight if you fight Golovkin, and I think a lot of other people will, if you want to fight. So,
Hey, Froch, count me in.
we're in. We'll go together.
Yep.
So, basically, we got DeGale in this one. I think I agree with you guys. I think DeGale wins.
I think DeGale's going to win, but this should be a distance fight, I'd imagine, right?
It has the markings to be.
Yeah.
It could be almost anything because the reason the bookies are so confused on odds and that it's so tight is that it is tight, and it's tight in the way that anything could happen type.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know how good of a punch DeGale could take. We know DeGale can be outboxed, but we also know that DeGale is a rising talent, and he's looked really good lately. And the other thing is where DeGale can suffer and why Dirrell is favored slightly is because the longer this fight goes, the worse it is for DeGale, because DeGale, he's not the smartest fighter. He has a tendency to want to go in and take guys' heads off, which is all fine, especially for guys like Jason. But it also leads to losses like the one to George Groves. And Dirrell is a
Yeah.
very good boxer. You can't take that away from him.
And if George Groves has outboxed you, you gotta have some looks at that.
Yeah, you gotta take a look in the mirror and ask yourself some questions, some real tough questions.
I think he's evolved since then. We've seen the evolution of, so yeah, I still put my money with DeGale for this.
And the last thing about this fight, when Dirrell went to the Olympics in 2004, he lost and won a bronze, and the guy who beat him, Gennady Golovkin. You guys aren't impressed by that? It was a close fight.
What? Golovkin beat another hopeless foe? Nope, not impressed.
That's getting edited out.
I forgot our mission statement there for a second.
Next week, we also have, and it's the day before, so this is going to be on Friday, early in the morning for us, Alexander Povetkin, probably the number 3 best heavyweight in the world behind Kubrat Pulev and Vladimir Klitschko, who's going to be fighting Mike Perez in Russia. And you guys might know Mike Perez as the guy who fought on HBO twice. One time, impressive, and then one time, very impressive. Jason, are you looking forward to this fight?
I can't even do it.
All right, Simon, you're actually going to be able to watch this at a decent hour. So why don't you tell us about how excited you are for this fight?
I think it's not just this fight. This card is going to be fantastic. It's about 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, so you can finish work and then straight onto it. There's some really interesting stuff happening all over that card. I'm a sucker for the heavyweight division anyway, but this fight's good.
True.
It's going to be exciting. It's in Russia, so its chances for shenanigans and oddness, have gone up as a result of that.
Both in every way.
Is it that same crazy Russian billionaire that put on the Povetkin Klitschko card?
Good question, Simon.
I'm not. I don't know. I'm afraid.
This is really just a showcase fight for Povetkin, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so necessarily at all. It's got the markings to be quite competitive. Povetkin, both of them have lost to fairly strong opposition, but Perez, less strong opposition's beaten him. So, of course, Povetkin's going to be a wide favourite going in, but I don't think it's going to be an absolute blowout.
Well, who's Mike Perez beat?
Yeah. Perez also hasn't looked great recently, and I think it'd be prudent to mention the Magomed, fight. And
it's not like Perez dominated that fight, though. He got as good as he received. Okay.
Well, that was the point that I was. Yeah, exactly. And
he lost to Bryant Jennings. Come on.
And his post Magomed performances haven't, been that great.
He looked dreadful against Carlos Takam. He got a draw, luckily.
But Takam's a tough, slick kind of guy, too. So
now that brings me to my next point. Povetkin brutally knocked out Takam.
Yeah.
Very recently.
I get what you're saying, and I'm not going to disagree because Povetkin's got the upper hand for this one. I just don't think it's going to resemble an Anthony Joshua fight. And thing to remember for Perez has 100% victory record on Fridays, and this is a Friday fight.
Oh, shut it down, boys. I think that's it.
I wasn't even trying to make the case for a winner here. But what I was really trying to make, and that wasn't clear, I see now, is that Povetkin is way better than people give him credit for. And I know most people, all they remember and all they know about Povetkin is what they saw in that Klitschko fight. But I'm going to tell you, Povetkin is a gold medalist. He won the World Amateur Championships multiple times. Apart from Klitschko, he's never lost. And the one fight where you could say, okay, well, he might have lost that one was against Marco Huck. And if you think that Marco Huck isn't a great fighter, you don't watch Marco Huck. He's a really good cruiserweight who jumped up to heavyweight, and it was close, and Povetkin still got the decision. So Povetkin is a really good fighter. I think he would beat Deontay Wilder, or at least it'd be a really close fight. He's still a class below Klitschko, but Povetkin deserves respect massively.
Yeah, and I think that heavyweight isn't alone in this, but it's quite prevalent where when you lose to Klitschko, and you will lose to Klitschko, but when you do, all of your fair weather fans just sort of like throw you in the bin immediately. Like, oh, never mind. You know, we've seen it happen with Pulev recently, where he was doing these great bits and pieces, and he has that showing against Tony Thompson. He didn't look great in it, but getting past Thompson's a challenge enough, and everyone thinks, you know what, this guy's legit. He then looks really good and has moments of success against Klitschko, but ultimately can't do it. And suddenly everyone's like, well, never mind, forget him then.
Yeah, it's like you get thrown in the waste bin and people forget about you in heavyweight once you lose to Klitschko, and it's not completely fair. Not completely fair. Jason says he has to go, so let's speed this up. Let's talk about the pound for pound list.
My joke on Perez there winning against Fridays, by the way, is because he beat Friday at Honanya a couple of years ago, if you remember.
Oh,
it's actually Friday.
My God.
His name Friday, yeah.
Oh my God.
Where? Oh wow. Somebody's name is actually Friday? Coming off of a no contest? Very
Friday,
good.
yeah.
Got a no contest because it was on a Saturday. No, it's crazy. That fight was a no decision because it was against Chris Arreola, our old friend.
Yep.
What?
I've got a point that I want to make about pound for pound lists.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Where were they?
On the floor.
Thanks.
Is that your pound for pound list?
That's it. That's the only point I'll be making.
Leopai's out against Shah as well on that same card.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one.
Like it's
Someone
just gonna,
getting
that's,
knocked out.
that's the right word for it. It's going to be so fun. That whole card's going to be fun. But yeah, I'm hoping that when they start the coverage at 5:30 here in the UK, that they catch enough of the undercard, certainly to get Leopai in there, and that we see Drozd and things like that.
Well, last time they started the Russian card and showed every single fight, but advertised like the main event starting at a certain time, and you had to sit through 6 hours of fights before you actually got to the main event. So I think the likelihood is pretty good that we're going to get all the fights.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're watching on a terrible Russian stream as I was.
Is it on television in the US?
No, it's on television in the UK.
Yeah, it is. It's on Box Nation.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said.
Yeah, he said
right.
it's on in the UK.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah. No, nothing
But
in the US.
you can't legally watch it in the US.
No.
Wow, that's a shame.
No, we don't care about heavyweights not named Wilder or Jen.
So basically, we like to watch the minor leagues of the heavyweight division.
We like to, the AAA heavyweights.
Anyway, you have a point about the pound for pound list, Jason.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. I think I don't think it's actually a topic that I've discussed with you guys in the past. So when the pound for pound rankings come up, every time inevitably, people rank Klitschko anywhere between 1 and 3, well 2 and 3, right? That's a pretty.
Are you sure? I've seen some Klitschko at like 8 stuff. It's some garbage.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well.
But yeah, you are right. The majority of people's put them in 1 to 3.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I'm not going to say there's the exception, but the majority of them put them anywhere 2 to 3. What do you guys think about that? Because I think there's a strong case to be made that when you're looking at what pound for pound is, right? It's strip away weight classes. How would each fighter compete in any weight class against any other opposition? Right? That's the concept.
Completely flawed concept, though, because styles make fights.
Totally. But that's the concept that we're working with.
Yeah, the other flaw comes when you're like, Gonzalez would just be too quick for Klitschko, and it's like Klitschko is really quick for a guy who weighs like 20 stone. You know what I mean? He's a beast.
So here's the thing: I think there's a strong case that could be made for not having heavyweights in the pound for pound rankings, because so much about what Klitschko does is based on his physical ability, right? And his physical ability, but I mean like his natural height and size advantages. Right?
Do you think if he was against someone who weighed more than him, that it'd do worse?
Not necessarily, but there's something about his style that's intricately linked to his physicality.
I know what you're saying.
Do you see what I'm
let's just
saying?
imagine that Tommy Hearns was in the welterweight division and he fought Kell Brook, which would be kind of similar to what Klitschko versus Povetkin would look like. You have a massive welterweight. They still weighed about the same amount, though. Klitschko doesn't outweigh his opponents by a lot. He is bigger, but he's actually pretty light for being a guy who's 6'6".
Right, but he's massive.
He's not Andy Ruiz
So
Jr. going in there.
what I'm saying is that you can't strip away his ability to be massive, right, from his skill set.
Do you need to?
Well, if you're just looking in terms of skills, yes, because that's what pound for pound is about. It's about who has the best skills, not who has the best physical advantages.
All right, here's my rebuttal to that then. It's that both Klitschko brothers had problems when they started because being tall isn't necessarily an advantage. It puts your chin right out there. You can't tuck down, and there's just as many disadvantages as advantages. And their vulnerability showed early in their career. It took Manny Stewart to come and patch them, and fix their styles so that they could fight more sensibly for their build. So the size inherently doesn't equal good. We've seen this with someone who's similar size. You've got David Price, for example. That's he's a skilled boxer, but it wasn't enough because he's someone who's got that physicality but isn't cutting it. What makes the Klitschko brothers as a unit so good in the heavyweight division is their size and their tactics, abilities, and skills. Without those, you're left with David Price, who's susceptible for knockouts, just like the Klitschko brothers were before they met Manny Stewart. So I feel like it's kind of like almost built as a way to discredit or exclude them from the conversation when I think they absolutely belong there.
Right. Yeah. So that was the question I'm asking. Right. Is there a valid case to exclude them from the conversation? And you're saying no. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because I think you gotta learn to work with what you got. Rigondeaux is very small for his division. He's 5'4". He could fight as a flyweight if he wanted to. Donny Nietes is 5'3" in the light flyweight, 108 pounds. So, and Manny Pacquiao is a little tiny welterweight, and he's made it work. And same with Mayweather. So, part of boxing is working with what you've got. I mean, Bradley's got his
massive head.
It's not bigger than Pacquiao's, though. Come on.
No,
you guys give Bradley way too much.
There's physical attributes that you have, and I don't know if you're like, what if Amir Khan didn't have an arm? What if so and so was shorter? I don't know. They're not.
What if Amir Khan wasn't knocked down by Gomez early in his career?
Yeah, we're saying what if they didn't have these physical traits, but they do. We're talking about the fighters as they exist, and they exist with those traits.
Well, let's jump into the next thing, all right? Do you guys think Amir Khan belongs on the pound for pound list?
No.
Jason?
No.
Okay, why not? I'm going somewhere with this, so just...
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, just because he wouldn't stand up against the other fighters that I would put in my pound for pound list, I don't think.
What about his accomplishments? He just
hasn't accomplished.
Alexander.
What has he accomplished?
Yeah, he has half-finished accomplishments in various weights, but there's no weight that he's stamped his authority on.
Okay, then why is Timothy Bradley on the pound for pound list?
He's not on mine anyway.
We'll try to answer for the people who do have him on the list.
Oh, okay.
Why is Bradley on the list?
Because
he just fought to a draw against Diego Chavez and then lost to Manny Pacquiao.
It's as simple as this. There's a legion of Pacquiao fans that still have Pacquiao in their top 10, and Bradley looked competitive against him. Even fooled some judges into voting for him. And Marquez also stopped Pacquiao. And for you to have faith in Pacquiao as a top 10, you need to give that faith to Bradley and to JMM, because without them there, it's like, how have you got Pacquiao so high when these people have caused him problems in the past and don't feature on your list?
Okay, so that brings us to the next point. Manny Pacquiao at number 2 is...
Where do you... Well, I guess forget even number 2, because that's just ridiculous. Where is his spot now? I think it's kind of hard to place. I think it's very hard to place him.
Can I ask you guys a question?
He's a teenager on my list, so like 14, 15.
Does Pacquiao beat Kell Brook for you easily?
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, no.
So he can't be much higher than Kell Brook. There's a tendency for people to put a lot of emphasis on past accomplishments, and Manny Pacquiao is one of the most accomplished boxers in the sport, no doubt about it. I wouldn't take that away from him. But does that mean we include all of that what happened 6 years ago on his pound per pound ranking? No way.
Is
It can't be.
Roy Jones Jr. in the top 10?
He's still active, so yes.
He's still active, and he's got these great accomplishments.
And he has a win over Hopkins, who beat
yes.
Kovalov. So
and of course, we're being silly here. No, Roy Jones Jr. is not in the top 10 pound for pound currently, because it's
After
a
he
look at
beats
the
Mark
current
Huff.
scene.
I think a case could be made for Pacquiao in the lower top 10. But to rank him anything above, like 7, I think is really being very generous.
what about Golovkin? A lot of people are rating Golovkin somewhere around the top 5.
1.
Yeah, you've kind of dug yourself into a hole where you got to say that now.
He doesn't run.
Oh boy, stop,
Okay.
Simon. Jason's not going to say anything serious here, so it's all on you.
All right, let me have a big pause for a minute. Okay, so with Golovkin, I have him in 7th on my list. And I think
Ridiculous.
I think that's fair. So I'll give you my list. I've got Mayweather on the top. He's not been in the top for me ever before. This is the first time I've put him in the number 1 spot. Second, I got Vlad. Third, I've got Rigondo.
Because you had
I've
Pacquiao
got
before.
Fourth, I've got Roman Gonzalez. Fifth, I've got Inoue. 6, I got Garcia. 7, Golovkin. 8, Kovalev. 9, Crawford. And 10, Frampton. That's my list. Pacquiao would be just after that. Probably, I don't know, maybe 13. But yeah, Golovkin isn't cracking the top 5 yet, just because he hasn't got those signature wins. It's not because I don't believe in him or think that he's good. I think he's great, but you need that signature win to cement yourself in. And Mayweather moved to the number 1 spot for me when he beat Pacquiao, and I don't think that was a
Who was number 1 before? It's probably a lot of people's mind.
I had Klitschko.
You had Wild.
Before.
Yeah.
And the reason I had Klitschko is because
Did you just say Wilder, Jason?
No.
Oh, I thought you did as a joke. That would have been hilarious. I'd take it back then.
I had Klitschko in number 1 because Klitschko had always fought his number 2 rival and won decisively. And while Mayweather had that asterisk around Manny, I didn't want to give him the credit of the top spot until he'd addressed it. And I knew he'd win. And when he did, he's done what I'd asked of him. I've given him the top spot as a result.
Well, I'd say the things that I like
a
about
strict
your list,
father.
it's good to see Danny in there. People just discredit him because he knocked out a lot of their favorite fighters, or he had a close fight and they felt he was given a gift decision. Point me to a fighter that hasn't had that. So I think that's really irrelevant when you're talking about the merits of who he is as a fighter. I'd like Crawford a little higher. Hold on. That's what you said. Golovkin doesn't have a signature win. Murray is Golovkin's signature win. When you look at the landscape of the middleweight division, and you look at actual middleweights, and sure, you want to leave Cotto in there as an actual middleweight, Angelo, fine. Right, he doesn't have that top win, but out of his available opposition, he has the signature win is Murray. That's the one to point to.
It totally is, yeah.
He's
but
the number. He was people got him beating Sergio Martinez, who was the number 1 at the time. You know what I mean? So in my book, that counts as a signature win for Golovkin, or as close as he's going to get for a
as
long
close
time.
as he's going to get being the operative, because I think all the while that you've got Andy Lee, Quillin, Cotto out there, there's going to be people that said, oh, well, he's fighting the bronze medalists of the division, but not any real champs. And that's unfortunate.
But Murray, you can't discredit Murray.
Yeah,
no, it's a fantastic win. But
I like your point, Jason, because the middleweight division right now, even though we've joked about it earlier, the division is the division. Who we have in the division right now, that's what we have.
Yeah.
And we don't have Marvin Hagler and Roberto Duran in the division like people love to pretend. And they use that to discredit Golovkin. It's a little ridiculous. Let's address a couple of fighters, though, that I've seen on some lists. You guys tell me how you feel about their ranking. Vasily Lomachenko, Canelo Alvarez, Keith Thurman, and Miguel Cotto.
Can you do them one by one? Because I'm not going to remember all of those.
Yeah.
All right.
Who's first out?
All right, so Lomachenko. All right.
Too soon for the top 10. Real great promise, but hasn't done enough to earn that spot yet.
You
Well,
actually
because
aren't very high on Lomachenko, Simon. So
and because of what pound for pound is, I would say it would be okay to place him in the lower top 10 because we're looking at what his potential skills are against, competition. And I think he's proven through what he's fought that he's got the skills to be a fantastic fighter. So with him, it's an eye test, though. It's like, yeah, he passes my eye test to put him in the pound for pound, not necessarily based off accomplishments, but based off of an eye test.
so the eye test. I'm putting Kosai Tanaka on my list then.
Anthony Joshua's in mine now.
Yeah, why not? What do you
Yeah,
think
I
pound for
know.
pound is?
Exactly, yeah.
That's what pound for pound is. It's the eye test because you can't. These guys aren't fighting each other. Remember?
Yeah.
Like
No,
that's what it
absolutely.
Yeah,
is.
Mayweather Pacquiao. Yeah, they don't fight each other. Canelo
Yeah.
Alvarez.
Oh, get out!
He's not on my list, but I wouldn't mind, I suppose, him being like 9 maybe.
So you really fancied that Angulo, Lara, and Kirkland win, huh?
No, it's again, he's been dominant within the sport. You know what I mean? He's a big presence and has some good signature wins, some good skill set. I think he'd probably be maybe 12, 13 on my list, but I wouldn't be too annoyed if someone had him in a low top 10. Certainly not top 5 though.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't. I'm completely fine with keeping him off of a top 10. If you want to crack him at the very bottom, okay.
Well, he's still got Cornelius Bundridge out there who he hasn't beaten. So, and Demetrius Andrade.
Andrade's a good fighter.
Yeah, and that's not an easy fight for Canelo because what Lara didn't have, Andrade does.
Does have, exactly.
All right, what about Keith Thurman?
No.
It
Yeah,
doesn't work that way, Jason. I mean, Simon.
What you
I
mean?
really,
You have to explain yourself.
He
People
hasn't.
don't hear this.
He hasn't
They hear you
beaten.
say no.
I suppose he hasn't beaten huge names, and his last win he looked very uncomfortable doing, and looked like he'd had like living hell beaten out of him the next day. He had that giant egg form up. He took some.
You look like you jumped on a grenade.
Exactly, and
with his face.
you shouldn't look like that if you want to be top 10 pound for pound in the sport. I just think that he's good. I like the guy, but his skills I don't think are quite there.
For me, I don't think there's any division where you should have more than 2 fighters on the list from that same division. I mean, really, do you like the difference in class between Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, then Kell Brook, and Keith Thurman? How in the world do you pick 3 fighters from that division? Because if you pick Thurman for pound, you have to pick Pacquiao unless, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the logic is there.
Well, again, now you're putting a stipulation on it that you can't have multiple fighters from the same division.
You can have 2, but 3?
But I see your point is that, like, hey, America, look outside the welterweight division.
At
Like,
any point in
there's
time,
other great fighters.
well,
That's
true.
what you're saying.
And at any point in time, though, are there really 3 fighters in any division in the sport that there's any division where there's 3 fighters that can go on a pound for pound list?
Yeah, I think so. It happens. You know, you
Is
you
it the
can
year
get those.
1977?
No, you can get those
And you're
times,
using
but they are
hindsight?
they are rare, but they can happen. I just don't think we're in that situation currently.
Who's next?
Miguel Cotto.
Oh, he's not on mine.
Why not? He beat
'Cause-
Sergio Martinez.
He's not been relevant to any division for a good couple years now.
That's a fine answer.
Fair enough.
He's relevant to middleweight in the title he's got hostage,
Yeah.
and that's it. It's not through accomplishment.
Right.
Yeah.
Jason's trying to shut us up. Jason's son's birthday is today, and he chose to do the podcast instead of help his wife set up.
And it's my college graduation, so I'm doing it in a cap and gown.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Who else have you got oddly placed?
That was the end of my list.
Anybody who's got Crawford and Golovkin below number 5, Simon. No, I'm just messing around.
Yeah,
that's
the other
fine.
people, I think the other guys
No,
that
it's
are on the
totally
list
fine.
are they're properly rated. I think Kovalev, UA, they both have really good arguments to be on pound for pound list. Danny Garcia obviously isn't getting the respect that he deserves, despite continuing to win, no matter how he does it. And he doesn't always do it pretty, but he does it. I mean, sometimes it looks like, the Rod Selka fight, and sometimes it looks like Lamont Peterson.
Yeah,
Without
the point is
Froch.
though, he's still relevant to his division. Froch he
He's a
only
tricky
narrowly
one.
peaked out for me. I think
Yeah.
he'd probably be right after Frampton on mine. He was on my list last time. This time he's not quite made it.
Froch still deserves a spot on the pound for pound list. I mean,
Right.
Maybe.
above Lomachenko. I mean,
Yeah, he's above
I'm just
Lomachenko
thinking
on
who are you
mine.
putting
Totally.
there instead? Who are
Well,
you
I've
putting
got
there instead?
you've heard mine. I got the Framptons,
Frampton.
the Crawfords, the
Oh,
Kovalevs.
you replaced him with Crawford. You
Which
are going to
is-
get what's that word? Where
Ostracized by the UK.
yes,
Yeah, they'll kick him out to Australia or something.
Simon's
Yeah.
like legitimately offended now. What
No.
about Stevenson? Let's finish it with Stevenson. This is
No.
Jason's favorite fighter.
No.
Can't. He
Stevenson,
looked poor
one
against
hand.
Beaker.
Yeah, right. The one-handed fighter? No, thank you.
Oh, Manny Pacquiao? Yeah, I took him. Simon took him off his list too.
No, I don't think. I think again, I wouldn't at all be upset if somebody had him in the lower top 10. I personally wouldn't put him there, and when I lower top 10, I mean maybe cracking 10, right? Like his last fight, he's pulling up somebody from a lower weight division. Doesn't
Yeah,
do
he's
that.
not
great.
rated in your division.
You
You
know-
look amateur against.
Come on, that's not what a pound for pound fighter looks like.
It was lazy work. Didn't have any
Yeah.
urgency to it.
Get out of here.
Well, what do you guys think about? I'm going to change the subject. Paulie Malignaggi's fight with O'Connor getting canceled, being replaced with, if you don't know, a much better fight in Brian Vasquez versus Javier Fortuna. Are you guys disappointed?
I'm a Paulie fan, but he should have been retired. I don't know what he was doing coming out.
Go on.
I think I've spoken about this before. I think that he was set on retiring because he'd passed his torch to the great Sean Porter, and he had that tearful speech to him where he said, "Go, you owe it to me to go out there and be great. I don't want to lose to just anyone. I want my career to be ended by a great champion." And then Sean Porter immediately goes and loses to Kell Brook, and then looks less than spectacular against Bonet. So I think that Malignaggi's like, "Oh God damn it! Now I've got to go and pass my torch on again and find someone worthy of taking that."
Well,
All right.
that
I gotta-
about says it. Jason has to get running, and let me do some final closing remarks before we finish this podcast. But Jason, tell your son happy birthday. What did you guys
will
get
do.
him?
Oh God, we got him like an Octonauts playset. Credit to anybody who knows what that is.
I do know what that is.
I'll see you guys.
All right, let's talk quickly, Simon, about the Ilunga Makabu versus Tabisu Mashunu fight
That's easy for you to say.
in more ways than one. Did you see this fight?
No.
Well, it was very difficult because it wasn't televised anywhere, but I do know the result. And when I find this fight, I will watch it. I said it would be a tense fight because Mashunu has great defense and not a good chin. And Makabu has great power and terrible everything else. And it played out that way. I thought it'd be really tense, and that's how it played out because Mashunu lasted till the 11th round before he was knocked out.
Mm.
And Makabu gets a really good win over Mashunu, and now I'd like to see Makabu, who's 19-1 with 18 knockouts, fight Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff happening at Cruiser now, and it's been a bit of a empty wasteland of a division for a while. It was a sort of dumping grounds for people they'd outgrown light heavy. They weren't good enough to go full heavy, and so they were sort of like coasting, killing time in Cruiser. But Cruiser's starting to pick up some storylines, pick up some activity and stuff going on. So I think probably the next 18 months within Cruiser might actually be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and especially when Marco Huck finally decides to fight, which the rumor is he's coming to America, he could really and him and Roy Jones can add some interest despite, Roy Jones not having the skill he once had. and then Marco Huck is actually really skilled and entertaining to watch. I'm looking forward to what cruiserweight can provide, and I just, you hit it the nail on the head when you said that it's kind of a wasteland for people to, it's just like, well, this is the division I'm kind of stuck at because I can't cut it in these other two weight classes.
That's it, yeah. You got like Bellew and Cleverly running from light heavy and like, hey, let's hide in cruiser. We can fight each other because nothing's going on in cruiser. No one will even question it.
And then they don't want to fight anybody else.
No, exactly, because they're like this vacant division's actually starting to grow, and there's like life sprouting, and what they thought was going to be a kind of safe hiding place where they can look relevant and not have to do very much is suddenly becoming quite a dangerous ground where some people are coming through.
Yeah, it looks like guys are really taking it seriously, and not like other guys haven't in the past, but we're seeing guys, coming in at 199 and rehydrating to 120. Treating this division like it's the welterweight division. And then we also have some interesting prospects coming up. Jazad was hanging around for a long time, and he's finally coming to his own, and he's going to be on that Povetkin Perez undercard. And then Alexander Usyk, who signed with K2, also a good Olympic and amateur pedigree. This guy's coming on.
Yeah, it's another, oddly for cruiser, it's quite relevant to various countries that don't usually get a look into the pro scene. There's lots of more obscure countries that are involved in cruiser than in most others. And you think, I don't think I've ever seen a fighter from this country before. And they often show up in cruiser. Sorry?
Latvia.
Yeah, well, and various African nations that you don't see in other divisions seem to be quite prominent in cruiser. I don't know, it's a quite diverse weight class.
Yeah, and it really is diverse in that, if you look at just the undefeated guys or the top guys in the division, you have a guy from Latvia, you have a guy from Ukraine, from Cuba, from Germany. Actually, there's nobody who's from Germany. Nobody's from Germany. I messed up. But you have all these different guys. It makes for an interesting division. And a lot
soon
of
to be interesting. I think like 90% of the audience are switched off because we're talking about cruiser, but they'll get there eventually. I think in 12 to 18 months, people will be having conversations about cruiser and how exciting it is now.
Yeah, and Jason's not here to snap us back into reality. Yeah, so what you guys are doing, or I'm not getting Skype messages to say I'm still here. All right, so last topic of the day, and that is, it looks likely that the fight that's been in the works for years, according to Tyson Fury, is Tyson Fury finally getting his shot at. Oh, by the way, I didn't say this, but Tyson Fury, the best heavyweight on the planet, fighting the real best heavyweight on the planet in Vladimir Klitschko. Looks like they're finally going to make this fight.
Yeah, it could be a couple months away as well. It looks like they're looking to put it together quite quickly. They've hinted at it being in the UK, which I think makes total sense. There's a load of UK fans that will go to. Tyson has one of those fan bases where a lot of people want to see his like big mouth get shut up type thing, and that was very much the narrative for the Hay fight. The thing that doesn't make sense though is that the universe has proved time and time again that Tyson Fury is not allowed to have a decent payday. True. And I don't know what's changed, and maybe this is a new era dawning where Tyson Fury is allowed to get paydays. But I don't know.
My conspiracy theory about that?
Go on.
Okay, so if you don't know, Tyson Fury is of traveler heritage. So, I mean, for Americans who don't know what that means, he's a gypsy. Simon, you want to say more about that, what gypsies are?
No, I think that's pretty much covered it. All that's worth noting is that within the traveller community, boxing's a big thing, and that you'll see, Andy Lee is his cousin and is also of traveller heritage. He's got his other cousin.
Billy Joe Sanders is also Saunders. So basically,
but yes, it's a big thing within their community. So, and there's lots of talented people that come through from there.
So here's my conspiracy theory. Fury's had a bunch of big fights where he would get paid a good amount of money, get canceled on him. I mean, even moderate paydays have been canceled on him. And the reason why is the British government is either injuring his opponents or like putting the push on the promoter to cancel the fight because Fury doesn't pay taxes. What do you think,
Can
Simon?
you expand on that? What do you mean?
Well, they obviously they got to take their tax of his purse, right? but because they pay Fury in cash, they don't take the taxes out. So in order to make sure that they aren't going to lose out on that money, they just cancel the fight.
No, I think that the HMRC will likely never show an interest in boxing because it's just small potatoes to them. B, they wouldn't stand in the way of something because all of the other people involved would be declaring tax on it. And I'm sure Fury I don't know, maybe pays taxes, but I think that it would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater where lots of other taxable revenue is being lost as a result. There's all this, all of the venue takings would be taxable and subject to VAT. All of the concessions and things at there's, and then TV purchases, things like that. So they'd be throwing so much away at the expense of just spiting one guy. So yeah, I don't think so. I don't know what it is, why he's had such bad luck, but it'd be a big event if it does happen, and a lot of people will get the chance to go and see Vlad in action before, because Vlad can't have too long yet left, and he's just furiously trying to chase down that unification while Wilder takes very adventurous defenses rather than fight Klitschko. Because Wilder, has that been signed now for Wilder's fight?
The Gomez fight? Yeah, that's been signed.
Which is disappointing at best.
It is. Given that Gomez was stopped by Chris Arreola,
who was stopped by Stavern, who was stopped by Wilder.
Yeah, so I mean,
sorry, not stopped by, outpointed, but you get the point. Is that he's
No, he was stopped and outpointed. Oh no, you mean Wilder? Yeah, he
Stavern,
outpointed Stavern. Yeah.
But my point is, Wilder's clearly beaten Stavern. Stavern's clearly beaten Areola, and Areola's clearly beaten Gomez, and now he's getting a title shot. Like, are you crazy?
Oh, sorry. We didn't even know his name. His name's actually Eric Molina. It's not even
Eric
Gomez.
Molina. Yeah. I thought it sounded off when you said Gomez. I don't know.
And he lost to Areola in the first round. On one hand, I understand the need for a showcase. You've got to build up your heavyweight. But it's a completely other thing when you're putting him in with a guy who was stopped in the first round against Chris Arreola and went 8 rounds before getting stopped with the guy that Anthony Joshua just put out with one punch.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know, the biggest travesty here is that Klitschko wants legacy here. He wants to be unified, undisputed, and Wilder's got the last piece of that puzzle, and they won't let him get near it.
Yeah, it's a shame. And I'm really suspicious whenever you have a guy like Wilder, who's, 30-something, 33-0, and he's still not consistently being challenged. We don't even see Keith Thurman in these kind of fights where he's not consistently challenged.
Anthony Joshua's big next fight is a bigger challenge than this is.
Absolutely. I mean, people probably listening say, you guys cannot go an episode without talking about Anthony Joshua. Our next episode, by the way, is a big British pay-per-view card. So we're going to talk about Anthony Joshua again next week.
Yeah, and we should every week. He's a great story, and he's going to go far. But so going back to the point, I think Klitschko has smelled that he's not getting anywhere near Wilder soon, so he's taking the next best thing, which is another person on the fringe that they said he should fight, and it's Fury. That's people that are critical of Klitschko, and someone even said that he ducks opponents. It couldn't be further from the truth. His record is effectively the number 2 in the division consistently forever, and I think the only reason he was there with Jennings was to put himself back out there on the US map and say, hey, I'm still here, don't forget about me, I want that Wilder guy, so if you could start demanding that'd be great.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Klitschko, he either didn't take the fight as seriously as he should have, or was completely surprised by Jennings' style that we'd never seen before, where Klitschko didn't look as dominant as he usually does. But I mean, winning 9-3 is not considered not dominant for Klitschko. This is ridiculous. That's the standard we have for him, and it just really speaks to the difference between Wilder and Klitschko. And I know that there's a big hope for Wilder's future and all of this stuff, given that he's an American heavyweight. But
his future's now. He's burning daylight
Yeah, and Wilder's not getting younger. He's 29 years old.
Mm. Yeah, all he's doing now is incrementally damaging the quality of his own Wikipedia article.
And, Fury's younger than Wilder. A lot of people don't realize this. Tyson Fury's 26 years old.
Hmm.
The guy's a baby. And other heavyweights out there, Arthur Szpilka is 26. He's still got a lot of time to develop himself. Joshua is 25. Joseph
Huey.
Parker, 23. Huey Fury is like, what is he, 16 or something?
No, I think he's 19 now, but yeah, he's very young. And there's some great talents, and I don't know,
And then there's Shannon Briggs at 43.
Wilder needs to do something soon because he's been in a process of we're getting him ready and building him up, and I'm the biggest supporter of taking your time with developing people, but you're no longer developing when you have a world strap. People want their shot at that, and it's
Yep.
reckless and it's selfish to keep that inside a certain circle of people.
Yeah, I think as a champion, there is an obligation you have to, fight championship level fights. And so far, we haven't seen that from Wilder. Although, granted, he won
No,
the title in his last fight. Fair enough.
it annoys me though that it is infuriating that that belt in the first place going up between Stavern and Areola, that was so manipulative. There was just so many better people that could have fought for that vacant belt, and they get it, and they get it deliberately so that one of them can gift it to Wilder a little bit later. It's like smuggling that belt to somewhere where it doesn't belong and then sitting on it. And it's
That
not in the, it's not like with Cotto where he legitimately took it off someone who was past their best. This has been hand delivered with a bow on it. That's like, here you go. You can play keep away with this. And Klitschko is like piggy in the middle trying. You can never get this.
and there were other heavyweights too at the time that should have. I mean, David Haye, granted he had his injury and stuff, he should have been first in line for that belt. I mean, he was, I believe, the mandatory for it at one point in time.
Yeah, there's so many people even if it went on that Fury versus Del Boy Derek Chisora, if that fight could have been for that belt, and that would have made far more sense in terms of world rankings.
The Perez Abdusalama fight would have made a little more sense. At least both of those guys were undefeated.
Yeah, it's silly. I think that they can be allowed to get away with this, and that there's not bigger uproar about it.
Well, it's the WBC.
Yeah, it was scumbags who time and time again show themselves to be as such.
Are you channeling your inner Lou DiBella?
Yeah, I am. He's my spirit animal on this because they are absolute thieves.
Do you have your
And
napkin? Your legal document
I've
napkin?
got my legal document napkin. Yeah, no, but I mean, come on, in what universe were Areola and Stavern eligible for a vacant world? No, this isn't any like silver like belt or like junior belt or interim. This is like the fully fledged world title. Stavern Areola. You kidding?
The same belt that Floyd Mayweather holds in another weight class, and this is the one that they were fighting for.
Yeah, it's madness.
Which is why, the whole title system in the sport is completely flawed, and there's got to be something else, some other way to come up with something so that we can at least determine who the champion is in each division.
Yeah, I think that if in the next 18 months Klitschko doesn't get his Wilder shot and has to retire with only most of the belts, we need to rewrite history and just say we're ignoring the WBC belt because it's just been so badly protected that Klitschko was unified and had all the belts worth talking about.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Oh, you know what? I wanted to talk about really quickly because we're already approaching an hour and a half. Last night, Adrian Estrella, who is a prospect. He's a super featherweight prospect, and I thought maybe he could jump up and fight Takashi Uchiyama, or at least be the heir to that division. Goes and gets himself upset in the second round, stopped by Eden Sansona, who is Marvin Sansona's cousin. Way to go, Estrella, for making me look like a fool.
That's That's the thing with boxing, though, isn't it? Is that when you've got your hopes on someone, everyone's susceptible to have egg on their face. And the problem is like when you see the older pundits that have been doing boxing for a long time, they always seem quite milquetoast and they're reluctant to put any stock in any prospect because they've been there before and they've had their fingers burned where they've been high on someone who's been completely wrong. He's turned into an Audley Harrison or whatever, and so that they never want to have any faith in anyone because they know what this sport's like. And I hope I never get that jaded, and that I'll still be able to have faith in your Anthony Joshua's. And you know what? Maybe AJ does get completely upset and surprised, and we're all wrong about him, but part of the fun is taking a gamble on people and putting your faith in them. And of course there's unknown variables, but they're always going to be. That's life.
Yeah, I think after a while, when you stop being, such a fan of certain fighters, you tend to go more towards the prospects and holding those guys as like your kids almost, where you want to see them do good and you put a lot of, stock into them. And it's a lot of fun. So when you watch them fight, a lot of people are going to be watching that Verdejo fight when he fights Ivan Nahara on the Walters undercard. They're going to be pretty tense watching that fight because a lot of people think he's, the top-rated prospect in the sport and all this stuff. In any struggle, that's going to be a nightmare for them to watch.
Yeah.
But that's, it's fun to watch boxing like that.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. I think that you have to go out on a limb sometimes and make sort of bold statements, because if you don't, what value are you adding to anything?
Yeah, and Estrella, 20 knockouts in his 22 wins, and then he just gets stopped last night by a guy who had
no reason to be doing that.
Right, he fought to 2 draws in his last 3 fights, and the 2 draws came against guys with winning records, and then the other fight, he stopped some guy who, poor guy, had 27 losses on his record. So, but these Filipino fighters, not to generalize, but they score a lot of upsets. It's like their specialty. Ray Loretto, Sonny Boy Jaro. In the lower weight classes, like, you just don't fight Filipino fighters with a few losses on the record because it's likely that they're going to upset you.
Yeah, they are the banana republic where they just manufacture banana skins for prospects around the world to slip up on.
If you ever noticed, Eddie Hearn does not use Filipino fighters on his showcase fights. He uses Argentines because I guess he knows you're a little more likely to get what's advertised with them than the Filipinos.
Josh Warrington.
What about Josh Warrington?
His last fight.
Josh Warrington's a special talent. Come on.
And what happened, though, when he did use a Filipino?
Warrington?
Warrington's last fight was against that Tuberion, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Tuberion's Filipino, right?
Well, I think what your point is Warrington couldn't stop him, even though he had him hurt.
Well, you said Hearn never uses Filipino fighters. That's That's the occasion when he did, and it didn't go well.
I mean, but really, did anybody really expect Warrington? He has 4 knockouts in his 20 fights up to that point. Warrington, I mean, betting on knockout for Warrington, even though he'd had 2 straight.
Yeah, I know. But the point was, he got him in trouble. And then they let him have an extra round, an extra minute in the round to finish him, and he still couldn't do it. If you remember, he was just pummeling him against the ropes.
Warrington is, we love Josh Warrington. That's all we're gonna say.
But yeah,
he beats him.
It cemented
I'm kidding.
It cemented for Hearn why not to use Filipinos as championship fights.
Correct. Anyway, so that's our discussion on Filipino upsetters. Come back next week. We have a packed week next week, and we're going to preview Amir Khan next week. We'll get Jason riled up about Amir Khan. All right. Thanks for listening. Till next time.